Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game So today we're going to continue the series. Is that an analog in your pocket? Are you just happy to see me? And today we're going to be taking a look at the recently released OpenFPGA Atari Lynx core, ported by Voodoo 2 from the MiSTer FPGA side of things. It's always awesome to get new OpenFPGA core, especially for a handheld on a handheld, and that's definitely something to be celebrated. So I'm going to go over the Lynx hardware, talk about some of the games, and talk about the new core. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But the Atari Lynx hardware was always very interesting. It had great graphics and a full color screen, where its main competitor had a black and white screen. It also had more than one way to hold the Lynx, giving you some vertical screen or tate screen orientation as well. But all of those things really didn't help it get much market space whatsoever, because Nintendo and the Game Boy just absolutely decimated any other competitor. Whether it was the Lynx or the Game Gear, no one could touch Nintendo's absolute dominance of the handheld market. But that doesn't mean there aren't fun games to play on the Lynx, and it doesn't mean that it's not awesome that we have an open FPGA core. So the first game we're taking a look at is Batman here, obviously a side-scrolling beat-em-up. I wouldn't say it's the best game on the platform, but it is decent fun. But the reality is it runs so well here on the open FPGA core. In all this footage, I really didn't notice anything whatsoever that made me think it was doing anything other than the FPGA core on the MiSTer FPGA side of things. And do be aware that the Lynx has an interesting screen refresh rate, some of which is non-standard for any sort of television, so every once in a while if you do see something odd on your Analogue Pocket or on your TV when it's docked, just be aware that the refresh rate is probably doing something in the background that your television and the core just do not interpret correctly. That's not something that can be accommodated for. It's very similar to the Wonder Swan, where the refresh rate was well over 60 Hz. And now moving on to the next game, you can see here the Lynx had a very good graphical look for its time and place. This was competing directly against the Game Boy, but obviously it had the ability to do so many better graphical effects. Blue Lightning here is another game that really showcases what the Lynx could do, and the sprite here with all of its animation and different looks and pseudo shading really does give it a very distinctive vibe, and this is definitely a game I would recommend you check out. It kind of shows the power of the Atari Lynx as well as gives you some great gameplay, because there's a lot of fun games on the Lynx, but there's definitely some that I would say really aren't worth your time. But leave me a comment down below and tell me what your favorite Atari Lynx game is and whether or not you had the hardware back in the day. I did not. I only came to Lynx later in life as I started collecting gaming hardware, so it's not one of those things I experienced any nostalgia for from being a kid. But I'm sure some of you watching did have an Atari Lynx back in the day, so let me know what that was like, because I was definitely way more of a Game Gear fan. I did have a Game Boy at one point in time, but growing up, Sega was really the console I went with. Wasn't a huge Nintendo fan, even though I had the hardware back then. Sega was just my playground argument of choice that I wanted to defend. But as we complete the first mission here in Blue Lightning and land, I do love the graphical effects of the Lynx, basically having this infinitely scrolling plane look going on, and all of the different looks on this jet fighter. It even feels like there is a little bit of scaling going on. I'm not sure if it's proper scaling or if they're just loading in different size sprites, so if you do know that, leave me a comment down below, because the Lynx is interesting hardware, but not something that I fundamentally researched a ton like 3DO or otherwise. But the performance on this core here is great. You will see that as far as the resolution and overall aspect ratio, it is a bit wider, so on your Pocket you're definitely going to be getting some letterboxing, but that's totally fine. All of these games are infinitely readable even if you're not using 100% of the screen real estate, and obviously on a television you're going to get the whole thing, and I would say that these games definitely scale really nice. Now Chip's Challenge here is a game that I feel like maybe a lot of you haven't heard of before. It is the simplest game visually, but as far as the actual puzzle aspect of this is concerned, it is a highly addictive game. You're going to go in, you're going to think you're going to play Chip's Challenge for 5 minutes, and then suddenly you're going to spend 1 to 2 hours just absolutely trying to go as far into this game as you can. If there's one quote-unquote hidden gem for the Atari Lynx, and again, I don't know every single game, Chip's Challenge would definitely be the one I pick. And the nice thing is the Lynx had some pretty good sound hardware for back in the day as well. Listen for 45 seconds and I'll be right back. Really fun music, and you obviously get that fun chiptune beat boop bop going on there, but if you've never played Chip's Challenge before, definitely check it out on the Analogue Pocket. This is just an absolutely mind-bendingly fun game. Again, it's not really showing the overall power of the Atari Lynx, but the gameplay on offer here, the gameplay hook and loop, just really gets you into it, and you just want to be able to figure out how to get through the next puzzle and get to the next level. This is just absolutely addicting gameplay, so definitely do play this one. Now let's move over to the next game. We're going to test Ninja Gaiden. I would say this one is not bad and is not good. It's totally middle of the road Ninja Gaiden port action here, but I do love the title screen, that lightning lighting up the faces. It does work, but you will see when you get into the game, it runs relatively slowly. Now that's not the core or the Analogue Pocket, that is just the gameplay speed of this game. I did check some footage online and it basically seemed one-to-one identical. So some of the Lynx games just move at a slower pace as far as the gameplay style is concerned. If you freeze frame this, it absolutely looks incredible in a still, but in motion it definitely has a little bit of that muddy feel, almost like you're trying to run through water, for lack of a better term. It is a fun game. It's definitely one that I do recommend you check out, but I would say this is one of those games everyone seems to know because it is Ninja Gaiden, but no one ever seems to love. But on a performance and technical standpoint, again, on the core port, it's working exactly like you would expect it to if you picked up an Atari Lynx. And of course, if your Lynx isn't screen modified with some sort of new panel, this is going to be even better of an experience, because obviously the original Lynx screen and the technology of the time doesn't really lend itself to looking all that great today, especially if you have an original screen. There's so many decades on that thing, it could basically be almost non-functional at this point in time. Now let's move over to one of my favorite games on the Lynx. This is a port of Toki, the arcade original game, and it is an absolute ton of fun because it is just Toki. But do be aware, if you've never played Toki before, it is also Toki in the way that it's a cruel game. When you die, you get pushed back a little bit, and you're going to end up in a spot in the game where you keep dying over and over again. In the arcade version of the game, that doesn't matter, you just credit feed it, but on the Lynx version, it's going to give you a harder time. But as far as a port from an arcade board to the Lynx, I would say this might be the most successful game on the hardware in and of itself. These large sprites here on the screen, Toki's animations, all of the different colors, this just looks 10 out of 10 outstanding. So if you've never played Toki before, or if you've only played the arcade original, definitely check it out on Lynx. It is one of my absolute favorite games. Now we're going to move over to Kung Fu, and I'm not really sure if this is a good game or not. I just absolutely love it because it's absolutely absurd. You're going to see here this man walk into a house, a little bit of a mid-century modern vibe going on there. I do like that, and I would definitely live in it. And he's going to go up to his refrigerator, and level 1 all of a sudden is the freezers. And you're going to see the next thing that happens is you are having a beat 'em up in a freezer in and of itself. That is absolutely one of the wildest concepts for an arcade beat 'em up style game ever. The beat 'em up action is definitely mid-tier here, but the overall charm and weirdness of this game is a 15 out of 10 for me, and it's also got a fun soundtrack. Here comes your second sound sample of the video. Maybe not the best music, but it is fun, and you'll see here you're basically playing as the Jolly Green Giant fighting peas, frozen hot dogs, what I think might be shrimp as well. This is the type of game where the actual mechanics are just fine, but the over-the-top silly nature of it just lends itself to being something I absolutely love. Now do be aware, on some Lynx games you might get some flashing colors to the right or left hand side of the screen, just some overdraw. I've removed that here just because it does rapidly flash, and I didn't want it to bother or affect anybody, but I'm not trying to hide it, just so much making sure everything is kind of not flashing on the screen all at once. And you definitely get some killer tomatoes as well. So Kung Fu is one of those games. It would be the first game I recommend anyone play on the Lynx if you've never played a Lynx game before, not because it is the best game, because it really to me is synonymous with what the Atari Lynx truly was, a different handheld that had a completely different vibe gaming wise than the Game Boy or even the Game Gear. And these are the things that I think are frozen shrimp here, but you leave me a comment down below and tell me, are those shrimp? Are they just ice monsters? I really can't figure it out. But whatever you do, don't pass up Kung Fu. It is probably the weirdest game on the Lynx, and you get to fight what I assume to be an Ice Cube King right here on his throne of ice. This game is creative, it's inventive, it's always showing you something new to see and do, and while I said again, it's not the best beat 'em up of all time, as far as the overall unique nature of it, it is one of the most interesting games I've seen in a long time. And of course, you also get Pac-Land. That is the type of game that people either seem to love or hate, and it has such an interesting visual graphical design style. Pretty much every version of Pac-Land had this vibe going on, and while it definitely looks rudimentary and almost like a kid's computer edutainment game, the education and gaming combination, it does work really well here on the Lynx. So if you love Pac-Land, you have it here on Analogue Pocket now on OpenFPGA, and if you don't love it, it's just a game that you definitely don't need to load up. For me, I've always found it intriguing, but I've never got that far into it. And of course, Mrs. Pac-Man has come along for the ride as well. Definitely a good version of Pac-Man, but honestly, we have so many different ways to play Pac-Man on the Analogue Pocket at this point in time. It is just another game that I know people would ask, hey, why didn't you show Pac-Man? So here is your Pac-Man evidence that it does work. We're chomping pellets, we're eating ghosts, we're doing the classic Pac-Man stuff that you all know, love, and remember, we're just doing it on the OpenFPGA core without a cart adapter hanging out of the back of your Analogue Pocket. But that's the current situation with the Atari Lynx core on Analogue Pocket. It's here in OpenFPGA. It does an excellent job porting over the MiSTer FPGA original, and Voodoo 2 keeps bringing us new fun and awesome cores to play on our Pocket. Leave me a comment down below and you tell me what your favorite Lynx game of all time is. I would be curious. For me, it's definitely Kung Fu. It just has what I crave, pun very much intended because it's about food when it comes to gaming weirdness. But short of that, we're done. Hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.